You're listening to another episode of a Mindful Moment podcast. I'm your host, Will Nicholls, and I want to thank you for taking a moment to be mindful with me. This is the 24th episode of a Mindful Moment podcast, and this is a year and 1 month of doing the forecasts. And this is Leo season. As you can see, Brent and I are in our palaces at home enjoying this. I've also got my beautiful, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I got the lion piece on the gold chain here. So because it's Leo season and we go all out for Leo season. This is going to be a really fun podcast. For all those watching live and or watching on YouTube, you'll be able to actually see the charts as we go through them. For those who are just listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever, you'll have to kind of either refer back to the original video here on YouTube, or pull up the charts for yourself. And because I'll be talking about specific events and what's going on, so it'll kind of allow people who are watching along to be able to actually see the astrology play out as we discuss it. Because it's one thing for us to just talk about it, but then for us to actually be able to show you, it's kind of cool. So we're gonna do that. But first, welcome back, Brent. Thanks for joining us.
I'm so glad to be here. And you said a year and a month. Like we're really out here doing this. This is great. I've really enjoyed the amount of knowledge that we've been able to discuss over these like podcasts. It's like it might only be like a short like hour or two, but it's so impactful. Just even for me as a viewer of our own podcast here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me and co-hosting this with me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so we're gonna get into the main gist of astrology in regards to what Leo is all about and how we relate to this archetype, because archetypes are very important in astrology. They're very important in numerology. They're very important in Jungian psychology. They're important in a lot of things, psychoanalysis. Like all anytime we use archetypes, we're working with, in a sense, a general scope of one frequency of energy. So they're not, it's not a linear thing, it's not a rigid thing, but it is a there is kind of some objective truth to it, but the way in which we approach it is subjective. And so what we do here is we assist you in understanding that. And so we're going to dive into what Leo's all about and that its connection to the sun, because Leo is a very important sign. I know all the Leos want to hear that, but Leo is very important because the sun is essentially the generator for all life in our solar system. So Leo is a very important sign because Leo is in many ways representative of the light that is within all of us. All right. So when we can explore this energy, we not only explore ourselves on a deep level, but we also explore and understand our place within this whole grand picture of the cosmos. Okay. So understanding Leo is about understanding our own inner radiance. And one of the kind of evolutionary processes of Leo is learning to move out of ego, or out of the kind of primal, possessive, and almost exploitative type of energy of wanting to be superior to, or wanting to be better than, because it's, the unfolding process is you look in the mirror and you see how beautiful you are, and then you say, damn, that person's looking good, and you get so lost. And we don't want to get into that kind of, the tale of Narcissus. He just I mean, that was a little extreme. He goes, like, he starves himself to death and dehydration because he's just staring at his reflection. But in many ways, Leo embodies that type of energy on the lower levels, and learning to work with that, own our kind of primal nature. Like, everybody has that within them. Everybody has that little bit of feeling a little confident about ourselves. It's like, and if you don't, then that's a problem. That's that prevents you from really rising in your true confidence. That's what it's all about. So you have to kind of embrace that primal instinct. You have to kind of embrace that lower instinctual nature, where we know that we're radiant, we know that we're divine, we know that we're gods, we know that um you know we're very important, we're an important part of the universe, right? And in that knowingness, we can feel really good about ourselves, but we can also take it one step further and assist others in feeling really good about themselves too, right? What do you have to kind of add to that? Because I feel like, Brent, you're a Leo, right? Leo moon, right? So
Oh, I've got a bunch of planets in Leo. Not to go into them because well, I have Chiron in Leo. So I really identify with the wounds of Leo being the insecurities of Leo, because while I personally might feel all of that light that I know that I can send out into the world, there are times at which I got to be careful with, like, am I overstepping my boundaries? Am I like being, am I asserting that this person needs to be full of light when in fact maybe they actually need to experience some of the darkness for themselves?
mm,
With Leo, there's a lot, especially with Chiron, because Chiron's like, hey, I can help you. It's like, let me do all the healing for you. But in reality, like, we've got to allow other people to find their light. One of the things that I love about Leo is it's actually one of the signs that is associated most with something like spirituality, because it comes right after Gemini, right after Cancer, where maybe at Gemini we split into the two twins. Cancer, we sort of discover that there's a fluid unity between them, and then in Leo we sort of step into it. We remember that we are the divine selves, that we are also on this earth, and that we're here with some sense of a purpose. Now, I would also say that it's interesting that, like, if you look at any of the sun signs, we all have a sun sign. It's some sort of our personality that we express. Leo as a sun sign, it's just like the directness of the sun, but each of us, we can kind of
raw,
deduce the sun.
unfiltered.
Yeah, it's raw and it's unfiltered, and so we're all born under the same sun. So it's really interesting to step into the Leo and to discover what it means to be a fixed person or a fixed personality. So.
Hmm. No, exactly. And the sun is our expression. It's our personality. It's the vehicle which takes us from what was to what is, and or what was to what is going to be. And that's the real power of the sun, being that vehicle. And the sun in Leo, it's like, they're like we just said, there's no filter on that. There's nothing, there's nothing preventing that from shining to its peak capacity. And because of that, it's like, whoa, we can really feel that rawness, that energy, and that light. And that's what we're really feeling now, where um you know collectively we look at what's kind of going on in the world, and it's like, oh man, a lot of things are being revealed, a lot of things are being kind of illuminated, that maybe we didn't really want to see, or maybe we didn't really want to think about, or maybe we didn't
Mhm.
really want to notice. But that's part of the boldness that comes forth through Leo, is being able to shine light on the things that need to be seen,
Mm.
sharing the spotlight on things that require the spotlight. And that's really the highest expression of Leo, is that providing light to those who need it most, through embodiment, and not through needing to do and live up to some image and live up to some standard of expectation of what it should look like, but rather to legitimately be able to say, I, being the radiant light that I am, is what allows others to be also illuminated, which also allows the dark to be, seen for what it truly is. So
Mhm.
it's like, this is we're in an age of great reveal, a lot of weird fucked up shit's being revealed, where we're finally seeing the truth for what it is. And that's not always pretty, and that's not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely ever is comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about it as the sun does illumine everything. Therefore, we can't always hide from those things that are being illumined, and that's when we're trying to hide from it. It's like we're creating like this idea that we have to be safe from it or have to be in avoidance or in fear of it. But in reality, it's like when we're hiding away, this is the illusion of ego. This is the illusion of pride. This is the illusion of saying that, I'm me, but I'm not that. It's
Mm,
like I'm this, but everything outside of me, no, that's not me. But it's, in Leo, like if you go outside on any given day and you look around, like the sun doesn't just illumine like a little part of the earth. Like it's the whole sky, it's the whole world, it's the whole, basically everything that we can see. And
mm,
because of that, it's like we need to step outside of what we think we know, what we think we are, what we think we need to be, and just sort of like let the rays hit us, allow that energy to come through and say, like it's a guidance feeling. And Leo can get kind of off track when it's like, um, I'm going to make my own plan, because every time we make our own plan, God laughs. And
mm.
I think that's a Yiddish proverb, and it's just so useful to think about because it's not to say that we shouldn't have plans or shouldn't have some sense of who we are, but it's more or less that we discover who we are with Leo. We
Mhm.
discover who we're meant to be, not by creating it, but by listening to it.
Yeah, by listening and by breaking down all of the layers that are preventing our light from being shown through, you know,
Hmm.
the all that is, right? The only thing that's stopping, that's dimming our light is ourselves. And when
Hmm.
we are in that potential, we're in that full radiant embodiment, that full radiant expression of us, and we know who we are, and we're, because of that, we can be who we're supposed to be. That's us being fully embodied, and that's what shining our own light is all about. It's
Yeah,
not about
it's
doing some crazy, even it's not about doing some crazy breath work or some sort of ritual or some sort of, crystal fucking enchantment. Like it's simply about deconstructing all the rigidity that you have towards yourself, towards your light, towards who you truly are. And in that process, discovering who you truly are, and seeing that light for perhaps the first time ever, and that's what it's all about. And I mean, as Brent and I will talk about as we look at the astrology of the season, like, this, especially now, is an amazing time to really open up to our light and see it in a capacity that's perhaps we've never seen before, and that's kind of the magic of this season. With, as we'll talk about, the full moon square Uranus, the full moon in Aquarius, and then the new moon in Leo, which is a pretty wild new moon experience as well. Okay, so the 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 events that are happening in this season are pretty impactful, and not so much as it has been over the last couple of years or a couple of months, where the focus has really been drawn outward, right? It's been very much drawn outward on, and yeah, the astrologers and the people are saying, look inward all the fucking time, right? But naturally, our attention and energy has been drawn outward at the world, at all the things that are happening in the world, right? All the changes that are happening, all the fucked up, deconstruction that's happening about with our that we've talked about would happen with the Saturn Pluto conjunction, right? Like we this is all that stuff coming to light. So being really mindful of that, being aware of, the this type of transformative energy coming through collectively out there. Okay, well, now we need to, we have the time, we have the space. Venus is leaving shadow, as we speak. Mercury is leaving shadow. Then Mars is entering into its pre-retrograde shadow, where now the shift moves from out there and the relationships and our thought process for how we're thinking out there, and how we're communicating out there, and our feelings and how we feel about the state of the world and the structures that are kind of crumbling in our earth and our each other and the collective, to now looking at our own energy and looking inward and looking at ourselves. Mars retrograde in Aries, that's going to be a big look at ourselves. It's going to be a big look at all that we are and who we are and what we're doing with our energy, how we're expending our energy. Are we using it constructively or, to our detriment, destructively, which we have been doing, no doubt over the last since the beginning of the year and beyond. Like it's really about like this season is highlighting all the areas that we can become more aware of being in control and taking accountability for our own energy, not giving all our power out there, but putting ourselves, not putting other people on a pedestal, putting ourselves on the pedestal, putting ourselves in the right position to succeed and be the bold, expressed, light that we are here to be. And this season, and we'll get into it in a moment, but this season is really, really impactful to ultimately the rest of the year and how that tone's going to be set. It's like the lessons that we're learning here with the final Venus Neptune square, on top of the full moon square Uranus. By the way, final Venus Neptune square. There's a big aspect with Jupiter here too, which is very important to all of this, and specifically collectively how we're relating to the structures and ultimately even our economy in many ways. So there's a lot of major themes happening this season that are really shining light on some of the root causes, the root issues, which, as we will discover, always come back to ourselves, always come back to how we have been perceiving ourselves and what bullshit bias we've been reflecting back on the planet and on the earth right now.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to take in too. And one of the things that really stands out to me, especially, is like you said, with Venus and Mercury leaving shadow, we've spent first of all, we think about Venus, we can think about how we relate to literally everything outside of us, but it really fragments us into two, like me and them. Mercury does the same. We have our two hemispheres, left and right. And so now we're moving into a season of Leo where it's about the individual, it's about the self. And so we're cutting those ties just directly to those things outside of us, putting ourselves on a pedestal and just sending all of that energy of Mars just like right at our projects. But the thing is, we have to be able to get over the lower side of both Leo and Aries, where the lower side would just be like resorting to anger, resorting to resentment, bitterness, resorting to just being fiery rather than being thoughtful or being too overwhelming. We can use these energies to really bring in something that is deeply meaningful to ourselves, but we have to have the right foundations, and we're building those starting now. We are starting to build these strong foundations with all of these planets coming in, and I think Venus squaring Neptune really helped to identify the vision and to identify where it is that we still have holes in our understanding of self. So
Absolutely.
I,
Absolutely.
I see you pulling some charts up. You ready to talk about the astrology of what's going on?
Yeah. Actually, what I'm going to do before I go into that, though, is I want to get the chart for the very first uh, Venus square, which happened, if I could find it, in May. Yeah, May. We'll select this. So this is the very first Venus Neptune square, May 4th, 2020. So this is important, and the reason that I'm pulling this up before we dive into the final one is because this is what started it all. Okay, this is what started it all. This reveals, what were we experiencing, and this is the initial kind of rubbing against. It's the initial friction that created the challenges and the issues that we have been facing throughout this Venus retrograde period. Okay, so this initial Venus square Neptune, 20 degrees. Okay, we're bringing in all of this. During this time, Sun was conjunct Mercury. uh Chiron was in a semi-sextile with Uranus. We have uh Mars in a trine with Venus during this period too. So all this energy that's being brought here, a lot of it is rooted in how we have been processing and dealing with the emotions that we've been feeling. A lot of this has been due to how we've been perceiving our emotions, how we've been perceiving the reality that we have been facing. So this initial kind of shift showed us this aspect, this square showed us, okay, you know, this is the type of dynamic that we have been facing. This is the type of energy that we have been facing. This is the energy of, like, this is the mutable square. So it's really shifting up our paradigm, our perspective. It's like, you know, in order for us to really be able to see things clearly, in order for us to really see the situation and also watch the situation unfold in the way that we are desiring it to be, we have to let go of these rigid beliefs and paradigms that we have towards our relationships, right? Mars trine Venus, both in air signs. This is like, you know, we have the fixed energy of Mars wanting to, you know, keep, it's like, you know, it's very easy that once we get used to operating our energy in a certain way, that we just keep repeating that in that same way, right? It's very, it can be challenging to break out of that cycle when it's become familiar, right? And in that trine with, you know, that's what trines are notorious for, is keeping us in cycles that don't really serve us, right? It's like keeping us locked into experiences that don't necessarily serve our highest calling. So we have this Mars Venus trine, boom, you know, and this was happening like a few days before this too, which is important because the buildup was kind of immense, right? Within a few days. So damn, you know, this initial square set the tone, it set the mood, and the mood was understanding that what are the illusions and the paradigms that we have been kind of continuing to operate out of, that are no longer conducive with the desired experience that we wish to face with when it comes to our relationships and how we relate to others. You know, if it's like, if you want things, whether you were in a relationship at this time or whether you were not in a relationship at this time, if you were in a relationship at this time, it's like, well, what needs to change, because things cannot stay the same. And if you're not in a relationship, it's like, okay, well, what are these cyclical habits? What are these cyclical ideas and ideologies that you have towards relating with other people? How do you naturally, when you're in a relationship, utilize your creative and sexual energy? How do you naturally utilize your attractive energy? You know, what does that look like? What do those dynamics look like? Exploring what the hell is wrong here. And this is happening really deeply on a mental level, you know, like May was very, whew, you know, it was a, even though, even in Taurus season, it was a very mental month. You know, Saturn went into Aquarius, Mars is in Aquarius, Venus is in Aquarius. So, you know, very mental month about overanalyzing a lot of these challenges. And then if we flash forward to this final square now, right? This final square, like I said, we have this back to 20 degrees, right? And then we have the sextile and in quincunx to Jupiter here, which is a hard aspect. That's a hard aspect that really gets us to say, okay, you know, have we finally dealt with these issues? You know, have we, like, this is cardinal immutable energy. This is the energy of change. This is the energy of actually taking action on the things that we know we need to change and doing so, you know, and that, you know, that's why the Venus Neptune square was a great opportunity for us to really learn how we operate and how we would like to operate when it comes to relationships. And a lot of that has to do with expectations of our partner, how we're perceiving our partner. Are we putting our partner on a pedestal? Are we seeing our partner as separate from this, you know, ideal dream image in our mind, which they'll never live up to, you know? Or are we able to see them as a person and love them and accept them for who they are? Are we able to actually remove or deconstruct the fears and the pain from past, you know, experiences that we've grown comfortable within, you know? Because it's like, the things that didn't work in the past probably aren't going to work in the future. So unless you actually deal with it, unless you actually work through it, unless you actually let it go, nothing's really going to change. You know, nothing's really going to change. And not only that, you're going to suffer. You know, and we don't want that, right? We want to be able to live our life at the highest peak capacity we can live. And, you know, Venus in conjunct or quincunx Jupiter, it's like really, really giving us that opportunity. You know, it's like, okay, you want to change these ideals that you have towards, you know, your partner, and these like big themes of idealism and kind of unrealistic expectations, and also, you know, being mindful of how we're using our our creative energy, and our sexual energy? Are we giving that away and becoming exhausted after that, or are we allowing the safe space for that to be kind of nurtured and experienced in that regard? So this is happening all at the beginning of the season, like 4 days after the beginning of Leo season. This is when this happened, like what, one day ago, yesterday. So
Hmm. Hmm.
this is that cap, though. It's the ending of that. So it's like, if you actually took the time to really get into it, and by the way, if you did, you'd know, because it was fucking painful.
It's
Okay,
super, yeah.
it was very painful. So if you had been going through a lot of pain, then you know that you're going through it. And if you're like, oh, this has been a breeze, it's like, okay, well, then there's still some things that need to be learned, right? There's still some things that need to be integrated. Or you're just a pro and you've already integrated, and congratulations. But
Mm.
but all in all, collectively, no way. There's been a lot of that pain that's being brought up is, it's not pain to relive and relive and relive. It's pain to really fully embrace and let go of, and allow that and I mean, I think it's kind of crazy that this is all happening. This final cap is happening right when we have Moon Uranus opposition, both in fixed signs, Uranus in Taurus, Moon in Scorpio. So it's kind of like that. It's like capping it off. It's like, okay, this is this is the process. This is one dimension of learning that you have, in a sense, been graduated from. Congratulations, you made it. uh Definitely not unscathed, right? Definitely not unscathed, but better, more aware, more conscious, and hopefully, more clear, all in all, and being able to actually, work through this energy, and not just kind of, you know feel overwhelmed by it all. I think that a lot of people have been really feeling very overwhelmed by this, and I think that's a very sheer sign of, um in general, it's a sheer sign that we're not putting enough focus on actually changing. It's like, if the focus is on the work and changing, then you don't really have much to be overwhelmed with, because you're just fucking doing it. And I noticed that even when in myself, like when I would actually be processing through some of these belief structures around, I idolizing my partner in a certain way, or trying to keep her up to these expectations in a certain way, which were all just my own insecurities, that were coming up. And anytime that I would get overwhelmed by that, or kind of want to go back to how things were, I would notice that happening. And I always knew it was in a time when I was not being completely present to, actually dealing with this. It was in a sense, another way for me to go back to escaping it and avoiding that, and avoiding facing that. And I think when we can have the courage to face that, regardless of how terrifying it is, we definitely reap the rewards of that when it all comes around. And like I said, this is a big kind of like, it's like, this is really settling in now, which is nice, and it feels nice. And it doesn't mean that we're completely off the hook, because like I said, Mars is heading into shadow, but Venus is out of shadow, which has been a big deal over the last like few months, like a very big deal. And Mercury's out of shadow, and now we have Mars entering into shadow. Okay. And so now the energy shifts, like I said, from all this outer type of chaos to more or less of this inner sense of control. How much control do we have over ourselves? How much control do we have over our emotions? How much control do we have over our body? How much control do we have over our will, and our drive, and our persistence? Because that's the one downside when we have Mars retrograde in Aries. It's like, oh, and it's going to be retrograding back into an opposition over Juno, which will be bringing up any insecurity. Like, it'll rattle the foundation. It'll rattle the foundation of any various insecurities that we have around our ability to be disciplined with our energy, and our ability to control our energy in a conscious way. Mars and Aries burnout is real. They don't
Mm.
have unlimited energy. It's great, and it's amazing when it's active, but when it's not active, it's like it's not healthy, and we need to learn how to deal with that in a way that is that benefits us in the long term, and doesn't just be this like go 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 and then burnout, and then go 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 and then burnout. Like, that's not sustainable. And so we want to move out of that. And that's a big tendency that we need to be mindful of for Mars retrograde and coming into, now that Mars is in shadow, leading into retrograde. This is really the themes that are being brought up right now. It's like, how can you create a more consistent generation of energy, a more consistent generation of your will, and and keep that momentum going, as opposed to, like I said, going, and then burning out, and then going, and burning out, because that's no way to live life. You kind of want to maintain that state of energy at all times, and you do that by consistently monitoring how you're expending that energy.
That's a good point. That's one of the reasons why, especially if you look at Leo risings, you see Aries in the ninth house. It's so important to be mindful with your energy, because you can connect with this infinite source of energy, this divine source of energy. But at the same time, if it's not directed, like Aries needs a critical path, is probably the best way to say it. Because if they don't have a critical path, then there's shiny objects everywhere. And it's like those shiny objects are just like, I could use my energy for that. I could use my energy for this. Like, sure, I'll help you with these projects. Like Juno and Libra's over here forming our relationships with everyone. It's like, that's why it's so important in Leo season to remember that, like you said, we are the people that we are supposed to be putting on the pedestal. We are supposed to uplift us. We are supposed to put palaces in our green screens so that we feel like royalty when we do a podcast, because it even to some degree, it is about you and I. Will, like, as we grow as people, our audience is going to grow. And so the truth is, it's like only the work can be done through us, not so much around us,
Totally.
And in doing work around us is how we expend the Mars and Aries energy in the most unproductive ways that we can. So
yeah, and I think another important thing to look at during this final Venus Neptune square is we also have another square, which is Mars squaring Mercury. Throughout this process, it's really a T square with Juno, Mars, and Mercury, which is kind of accentuating the wrap up of this type of energy. It's almost like, when one challenge finishes, another starts, so like the challenge of trying to be mindful of how we've been perceiving ourselves and our partner, and the expectations that we've been putting them up to, shifts then to, what is our energy like within the realm of relationships, and how is that constructive or deconstructive to the health and wellness of our relationships. And also, where does expression come into this? When is too much expression, and to the point where it's overwhelming, to when does it feel really good to find that kind of state of balance between really recognizing when I can use my energy in a conducive way, and I can keep it under wraps in a way that is disciplined. Well, that allows me to express my feelings without getting overwhelmed and reactive about them. That allows me to be in a harmonious state of relationship without being all burnt out. It's like keeping that energy under wraps throughout all of this is very integral to the longevity of the experiences that we're getting into, especially Venus coming out of shadow. If your relationship survive that, then it's like, this is realistically, and this is the truth, no relationship survived Venus retrograde. In fact, no relationship ever survives Venus retrograde, because the whole emphasis of Venus retrograde is to destroy and create something better. And not, it's not always destructive, but it does break it down, and it kind of breaks it apart and cracks and rearranges the dynamic in a certain way that is ultimately more conducive with divinity. And if it can't handle that, then it breaks down and we part ways. But if the relationship is strong enough that it can handle that, you're both conscious enough to work through these experiences that get brought up, then you create a much stronger foundation. You create a much stronger foundation for relating. And that's what's being brought up, especially with this final Venus Neptune square, which is very, very interesting, that we have this cardinal T square and this final mutable square between Venus and Neptune. And Neptune, at the end of the day, too, is essentially the higher octave of Venus. So this square that's happening here is really relaying to us the highest potentials. It's like, it's great to have potential, it's great to have a desired ideal, for the outcome, but not to glamorize it in a way that makes us fall further away from the true light, which we can definitely see with the Venus Neptune. A lot of that revolves around lack of boundaries, not being able to say when I need space, specifically related to mental space and spiritual space, spiritual
Mhm.
practices, cultivating that, keeping that momentum up even when times are good. And I think that's very, very important. A lot of times we will do the work when times are not so good, but it takes a lot of discipline to do the work even when we're prosperous, even when we're feeling good, even when we're in a good state. It's like praying, meditating, all that. It's like, that's not just for bad days, it's for good days too. And in fact, when we do it on the days where we feel better, and when we feel good already, we lay in a stronger foundation for us to feel that way more often. And I think that's what it's all about, and that's the real work. So the real work is not just the work that we do when we're in hard times, but it's having the discipline to be able to recognize the importance of, even when we're not fully conscious of, these events that are happening, or we're not fully conscious of the direction of where this is all going, that we can make ourselves better as a result of that. We can really rise into that potential as a result of that.
I feel like I'm really feeling that in addition to the moon's nodes as well. Because I mean, even if you look at the moon, Neptune, and Venus, they're all a similar octave of each other. And with the moon in Gemini, it's like there's this idea of unity between one and the other. And even within Sagittarius, we're learning how to like get rid of those beliefs there too. The South Node, the karma, the past lives. We're releasing these urges, or like almost being overt with our urges, too zealous, too fanatical, to
Mm.
the point where like the highest octave, like when the moon is when the nodal axis is in Gemini, it's like the perfect time to address like how am I with myself, how am I with other people, how am I with animals, how am I with drugs, how am I with everything, because it's a fundamental relation, it's a mental relationship that we share. And when the mind and the moon come together, there's so many correlations, so many parallels that come from that. So
Hmm.
um and
Yeah,
then the
totally.
sun trine chiron here, what do we have?
Yeah, so I mean, this is this is kind of also really shedding light onto, like, when we had the Mars Chiron conjunction, which was a little bit later in Cancer season. We That was also kind of breaking open the ways in which our energy perhaps was leaching out, or incoherent with the true potential of what we could do with our energy. It's kind of like that when we're focusing on when we're given an opportunity to actually see things in the light of what it truly is, as opposed to, when we're all wrapped up in our relationships and all the chaos of, Venus retrograde and all the planets going retrograde, and these eclipses that we went through in Cancer season and all that craziness, like, and Gemini season too. uh all of that had kind of, kept our minds occupied to the point where we couldn't really see things clearly for how they actually are. And hey, because of that, we might have perhaps not had the full time to really analyze how our energy has been expressed in a way that doesn't perform to the peak capacity, or keeps us a little bit off track, right? And when the sun comes in, the sun at its peak form, right? Sun is fully expressed in its rawest form. So this is like the brightest light that we see all year. So sun aspects made in Leo season, like, this is the brightest light that we see all year, right? Aries season, we have some pretty bright aspects too, and illuminating aspects, but sun is home in Leo. Sun is home in Leo. So when we have Sun trine Chiron, this is exposing those kind of
Hmm.
healing cycles that we keep going through, where we're in that state of avoidance, where we're in that state of chasing, and we're not actually attaining, right? So a lot of these themes that were brought up with Chiron conjunct Mars, and just Chiron in Aries period has a lot to do with how we're our own relationship to our passion, the identity of who we are. Who am I? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? All these big questions that we've been asking and will continue to ask. uh these are really being, it's like if you thought you knew but you didn't really know, well, now's the opportunity to know.
Mhm.
July 31st, right before the full moon, right before the full moon, it's like we're given light into this. And this full moon is a quite a buildup, I have to say. It's quite a buildup of energy that we get to experience, which is pretty great. It's pretty great, the opportunity that we have, which I'll touch on in a minute. But the sun making this aspect to Chiron and Aries is like, and this is fire, right? Fire trines. It's bringing in an opportunity to shift the the cycles, to break free, to burn away the ties, that we have to these patterns of thought, these patterns of thinking. In Aries, it's the burning away the ideals that we have on who we should be, on what we should be going after, on what we should be doing, and instead really tapping into that kind of more primal nature, which is, I know who I am, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm here to do. And part of my mission is to embrace that, embody that, and see where it takes me. And guess what? A lot of that, a lot of us need to experience some more time to heal, some more time to work through how we've been perceiving ourselves, right? Because we have a lot of trauma collectively towards how we've been perceiving ourselves. We see ourselves collectively as powerless. We see ourselves collectively as perhaps not worthy of prosperity. We see ourselves collectively as not worthy of great health and control and power over our own lives. And because of that, and because these kind of programs have been in place, it prevents us from really rising into our light. And this is an opportunity to do that, because our true light doesn't happen in moments of fun and pleasure and joy. Our true light shines in moments of darkness, in moments where we're really facing the shit head on and we're seeing the truth of ourselves and our situation. And it's like, you don't learn mastery in situations where it's all cool in the gang. You're out sipping pina coladas in the pool. That's not where you learn how to be a master, and how you learn how to really experience the fullness of your potential. You learn to experience the fullness of your potential by having moments that challenge that, by being immersed in moments that really challenge your ability, your capacity. It challenges even your own belief in yourself, even in your own belief in your capabilities of what is possible for you, and for ultimately, the collective as well. And I think that realization, I mean, the day that the sun shines Chiron, we also have, Mercury's opposite Jupiter, Pluto during this span of a week or so. Throughout all of that, Neptune's trining Mercury, as Mercury's opposing all of this too, which is really interesting, because Mercury gets slammed as it's leaving Cancer uh, towards the end of July into August. Gets slammed, with Pluto and Saturn. And I mean, Jupiter oppositions is a nice aspect, but it's so close to Pluto that we're still feeling that deep pressure, where we don't really get to enjoy the benefit of the Mercury Jupiter aspect here. But this, Mercury being slammed by this, while all the while, we're experiencing this. It's still technically squaring Mars, throughout all of this as well, which is really bringing in that kind of cardinal resonance of, we know there needs change. We know we need to lead ourselves in a new way. And the only way to do that is through harmonizing our feeling center, right? Mercury and Cancer, with the truth of where we're going, the truth of what is happening here now, right? With Pluto, it's like, how can we transform our ideals of our own expression, how we perceive ourselves, how we allow ourselves to express the fullness of all that we are. Like, are we seeing our the true feelings within us as they actually are, or are we idolizing them based off of previous reactions? Your emotions are tricksters. Your emotional body is a trickster, and the mind plays games. When you have mind wrapped up with emotions, oh my, good luck doing any real healing, because you can't. You need to get clear before that happens. And that clarity is possible, but only when we get out of the feelings and we really honor and respect this kind of Capricorn, Saturn, Pluto energy that we've been experiencing all year, and get really practical, get really real with the truth of what's going on in ourselves, and be prepared to let that go, in its peak capacity.
Mm. I really like the way that you just expressed that, because it really is that there are gestures in the mind, and that their play place is the realm of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, even at times like with my Gemini placements or my Cancer placements or any of those, I've witnessed when I've experienced some sort of like tragedy, some sort of like negative event, and my reaction was just like not to take it as seriously as I could, not to actually like let it hurt me, let me embrace it. For example, I would make a joke or giggle or like not be so real with it. But that's where the fault is. That's where the illusion is,
Mm-hmm.
because the truth is like as soon as we're like no, like this isn't like a game, this isn't serious, like this isn't not serious, this is time to like process it, to allow it to teach me something, to be open to it. And I think that's really what Saturn and Capricorn is there for. It's saying this is a mountain, this is what you climb. You just go around the circle of the base. If you aren't taking it seriously, you look at the mountain, you're like, I'm not hiking that, but what you miss, when you don't climb that mountain, is how many revelations you can get on each step of the way up. And it's until we actually do stop and get serious, we'll never actually get started or use even this Mars and Aries energy or this Lilith and Aries energy. It's like, are we going to go to the tree and eat the apples? Maybe we're going to look at the tree at the top of the hill and say, that's too many steps away for me to learn something. And because of that, even with the Sun trine Chiron, it's like the tree's there, like you got to hurt your legs to go get it. So
Yeah.
that's sort of how I feel. You posted a video a while back about sculpting our reality, and that's what we're doing, is that we're slowly sculpting with Saturn. We have a chisel and a hammer in our hands, and we have to have the vision, or else we're just going to ruin the block of marble. So
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. And it's like, it's a long and tedious process that we don't necessarily feel always good about doing. And that's part of the discipline, though, right? That's part of the discipline of Saturn. It's like you're not, and that's where the feelings can be tricksters. Because initially, we get very accustomed to feeling a certain way, whether that's positive or negative. We get very accustomed to feeling negative, and it's very addicting to feel negative and to feel to be immersed in negativity. And our body gets accustomed to that. And even when we're in the beginning processes of kind of breaking free from that, it feels uncomfortable and it feels wrong to the body. And we, our entire body is basically saying, don't do it. Don't get up out of bed, in the morning. Just stay in, sleep in, you don't need to change your life. You don't need to better your life, blah, 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 blah. And it's all these trigger reactions based off of fear and based off of just being so comfortable with being at a certain state or a certain kind of level of operating. And so that's where, really mastery comes in, specifically mental mastery. When we think of Saturn and Pluto coming into play as well, is being able to be the one that is in control of over our feelings, over our mind, even, being the real master in all this.
yeah, which is so important too for Leo season, because it's easy to be deluded by the light that we see. It's easy to be, to think that we're shining bright, and to think that we're disciplining ourselves, but in reality, we're really not. We're disciplining this idea of who we think we should be, when in reality, like, that's a complete waste of our time. It's a complete waste of our time. It's like, why do we even build towards something that is not really real in some sense, and not really meaningful, deeper than just like, for some status or something like that. There's this discipline equals freedom in the sense that it brings you closer to authenticity. It brings you closer to yourself. Otherwise, we'll never discover who that person is if we don't actively seek it. actively seek responsibility. So, you want to talk about the new moon in Leo, the full moon in Leo coming, or full moon in Aquarius coming out?
Totally. Yeah, full moon in Aquarius. Let me just pull up the chart here. And show it for you guys watching. So yeah, the full moon in Aquarius. Okay. This T square to Uranus is something that we need to be very aware of, because this is the catalyst for what is really creating these long-term change within us, this long-term adjustment within our how we've been perceiving our own light, how we've been perceiving our role in society, how we've been showing up for the world, and ultimately how we've been connected to the collective, because Uranus at the end of the day really does rule the collective. It really does rule humanity, and where we're headed. So when we have this full moon, okay, full moon in Aquarius, this is about learning how to move beyond the stubbornness, of not wanting to move beyond what we think is all that is. It's like a lot of the times you start to get really good at something. Like this happens even in the realm of astrology. Like when a person starts to get pretty good at astrology, you almost kind of develop this little chip on your shoulder. You get this kind of like, cockiness towards it, and if you do it right, you don't ever develop that. But a lot of people don't do it right, and hence they develop this kind of, cockiness where they think they know everything. And there's people like this in every single niche, every single field, every single industry. That's how it's just the way that people are in many regards, and it's how some people need to learn how to, be the best version of themselves. They need to obviously go through that process. But when we see this dynamic, when we see this kind of, you can really see it as an evolution that we're witnessing. We're really witnessing an evolution where we're transitioning out of almost one entire state of our subconscious conditioning to now stepping into the realm where we're bringing a hell of a lot more light and consciousness to the limitations that we have on our own minds, and how we've been perceiving ourselves in regards to being a part of the world. Because I feel like you know, a lot of people, especially people that don't have service-based businesses or don't have businesses that are, impacting the world, or aren't kind of working for an organization that is impacting the world in some way. A lot of people feel very disconnected and unimportant in what they're doing in the world. And because of that, it creates, and that's ultimately the majority of people. The majority of people feel that way because they feel like, their life is not very important, and they don't have a sense of meaning. They don't have a sense of deep meaning of showing up for the world in some way, right? It's like, what value do I have within this world? And if you don't have that anchored, which, to be honest, it's probably one of the most challenging things, because even when you are showing up for the world in the highest capacity that you can be there, when it's truly out of service, it'll always feel like, I know there's more that I could be doing. I know there's more that I could be showing up as. I know there's more that I could be doing. So that's like a never-ending chase, but it's about learning to integrate being a part of this world with also, at the same time recognizing your own individuality and your own uniqueness that is imperative to understand before service to the world, right? So the whole polarity of Leo and Aquarius is, Leo says, I'm the shit, and Aquarius says, well, you know, you are, but you're also not really in the grand scheme of things. I've seen things that you have no idea about, right? And I think a lot of times the whole God complex that we hear about with Aquarius and Leo comes from the idea that they, we really know something that other people don't know. And the truth is, everybody knows something that other people don't know. But at the same time, you don't know shit. You really don't know shit. And having that as the foundation of your beliefs allows you to learn so much more than any average person could ever learn, because that openness to learning, that openness to being wrong, that openness to failing, that openness to embracing failure, not as like a lot of people think failure and not succeeding is trying something and it not working out, and that's not true. Failure is not even trying. That's what failure is. Failure is the inability to even try. But when you can actually put in an effort to make good in this world, to do good in this world, to bring forth your light, to actually show the world what you're made out of, what you're here to provide, right? The value that you have, the innate value that you have. Well, that's challenged in this full moon. That's challenged. It's like, do you really think you're living up to that potential? Like, do you really feel like you're at your peak potential? Or is there room for improvement? And the answer is there's always room for improvement. So if you think that that is the case, you will be surely disappointed. And I think that that's part of the learning process. That's part of the learning process. And we have this Uranus T-square to this full moon. It's like, this is, by the way, this is the first full moon we have that's not eclipse, in a little while. So this is the first time we actually get to feel like just raw full moon energy again. That's not, it's not overshadowed by all this crazy eclipses and these longer term cycles. This is the first time we get to feel that. And wow, in a square with Uranus, which is really changing things up. So to me, I can really see this full moon as being the inner shift, the inner click that really allows people to say, okay, I know what I need to do now. And I know what I need to do. I know what I need to change within myself. I know what I need to change in the way in which I've been serving. And now I need to go. And now I need to start. Now I need to do. And I need to begin that process. And then that journey can be followed through the whole Mars in Aries retrograde cycle, as well as more of a long-term cycle being the Uranus transit, Uranus in Taurus. So it's really about getting the foundational ideas of who it is that we're wanting to become, what it is that we're wanting to like. And I don't mean like this idea that you have about yourself. I mean like literally, what value do you have to offer to the world? What value do you have to share with the world? What light do you have to bring to the world? And once you identify that, even in a small little capacity, because most people will not be able to identify the entirety of their light for the remainder of their lives. And that's just part of it, because you are so bright and you're so radiant, and it's almost impossible to totally embrace the fullness of that while still having a human identity, But in our highest capacity, in the capacity that we have the ability to do that, to try our best to really experience that, that is what matters. So it's about breaking free of our limits on service, our limits on our value, our own worth. This is a big theme for Leo season, is always about worth, how we view ourselves, how we perceive ourselves, how we value ourselves, because how we value ourselves is how the world values us. So part of stepping into service means that we need to let go of a lot of the values that are inconducive with who we're actually here to be. It's like, if you have this big mission but you're still here worrying about what other people are thinking of you, it's like you have to let go of that person who cares about what other people thinks of you, and really step into the person who literally gives no fucks, because you're so focused on service and you're so focused on actualizing all these ideas and these visions and these dreams that you have for yourself, that it doesn't fucking matter. And that's the truth of it all. And I don't think anybody can teach us more about being so rooted in our own light and our own radiance and our own capabilities than, the fixed signs, right? So to know, and I mean to really know what we're capable of, first there's some things that are in the way of us perceiving that, and those need to be dealt with. And those are rooted in insecurities, specifically regarding to how we're seen, how we're valued, how we're seen as worthy to the world, how we're seen it. Like, do you feel that the only time you are of use to the world is when you're physically doing something, whether it's serving, whether it's actively helping an individual through your business? Or can you recognize that all the work that you do, even the work that you do on yourself, is ultimately contributing to the betterment of the collective? And when you can have that, even something as small as that paradigm shift, which I'm sure will be one of many paradigm shifts that can take place during this time, um, this is the time for that. We also have Mercury opposite Saturn exact during this experience too, where now we're given this is the final wrap on Mercury's poor transit through Cancer. Holy shit, Mercury's been bombarded this whole
Mm.
time. But Mercury opposite Saturn, it's the same. This, like I was saying, the way in which we've been perceiving ourselves, which perhaps with Mercury in Cancer and this whole long transit, felt like Mercury's been in Cancer forever. This whole long transit of going back and forth, just getting pummeled by all this Capricorn energy, and now squaring to Mars and Chiron and all that too, and Juno. So a lot of relationship themes Mercury's bringing up, but this opposition is essentially allowing us to resolve the real inner insecurities that we have kind of been over obsessing about, and that have been preventing us from experiencing the peak levels of success. Because Saturn in Capricorn is not a bad thing. Saturn in Capricorn is an amazing thing when you utilize the opportunity that he presents to us, as opposed to abusing that or trying to cheat our way out of that or trying to cut. Saturn does not like cutting corners. Saturn likes when you go all the way and you commit wholeheartedly, and that's always the more difficult route, right? It's always easier to cut corners and try and do various things to make us feel like, get a little hit of worthiness or get a little hit of the ideal version of ourselves. But until we actually walk the walk, which is what Saturn's all about, until we actually can walk the walk in the right way, we will always be in that chase. And that chase ultimately prevents us from really seeing our light in the peak capacity that it really is.
Yeah, I really dig right now how the almost cure for all of our problems is really getting down to the earth, getting down to the practical, the routines, the steps. Because even when you were talking about Capricorn, it's like the best example is like climbing up a literal mountain. It's like to walk the walk, like you could walk 1 mile up, or you could do the whole like 20-mile hike. So it's like you can get the taste of it. You can like be outside, you can be in nature, you can breathe in the fresh air, you can hear the birds, but until you take the steps, until you take the walk all the way to the very top of the mountain, until you do that, you won't actually be able to fully experience what Saturn and Capricorn is giving, especially at these late degrees of Saturn and Capricorn as we're like coming back into it. The late degrees of Capricorn are way different than like the 0 to 10 degrees of it. So ultimately, I would say let me ask you this, Will. What is your greatest advice here for continuing to live in your highest vibration? Because it's like every day, like not everybody wants to wake up and be like, I want to do, live in my highest purpose. Because, it's really difficult to step into that. How do we stay motivated day to day? Doing like it, is it just releasing these blockages that we have, discovering our insecurities? Is it really, um, getting clear? Like what is it? How do you combine all of those things together? Do you know what I mean? Like you do a great
Well,
job at it on your Instagram and everywhere that you do content. So I'm just curious, like, what is your advice?
well, there's two aspects that I'd like to kind of draw your attention to here. Okay,
Okay.
the first is Saturn in conjunct the North Node, and the second is
Mm,
uh also, I mean, actually, because I feel like I've spoken enough about, but I will come back. Make sure you remind me if I forget about. I want to come back to the T square with Uranus,
mm,
because that'll bring it all full circle. But okay. First of all, Saturn opposite Mercury here. Okay, this is allow, like I said, no cutting corners, right? It's about facing and being in control of our emotions, being in control of our reactions. So it's not about motivation, it's about discipline. If I can say one thing, being a Saturn ruled year for me in my perfections, a 12th house Saturn ruled year for me, by the way, on top of Saturn being in Capricorn, having the Saturn Pluto conjunction and all this crazy shit, one thing that Saturn has showed me is that it's not about motivation, it's about discipline and consistency. And it's when it's not, because there will be days when you do not want to show up. There will be days when you do not want to get out of bed and do what needs to be done in order for you to feel like you fulfilled what you were supposed to be doing today. But does that really matter? Or does the bigger picture matter? Where you can then say in the future, I overcame myself that day. I didn't allow my emotions to get the best of me. I didn't allow my emotions and my reaction to yesterday or the day before or the things that have happened to overwhelm me and prevent me from doing what needs to be done today. Every day is a new life, and when you can have the discipline to keep up consistently with your practices, with the things that bring you regenerative energy. This is a big theme of Uranus and Taurus, especially making this square. It's like, how can we continue to restore ourselves? And we do that through connecting with nature and getting outside and getting more rooted and grounded in being connected with our environment and the world and the collective. And in doing so, we feel more at home, we feel more a part of it, and we feel ultimately more motivated to do these things. So motivation is a byproduct of discipline. So motivation, it's a byproduct of discipline. It comes naturally from discipline. It doesn't come because so many of us are so set on wanting to feel motivated all the time. Like, what are your top tricks? People are always
Yeah,
asking, what are
yeah.
your top tricks to feel motivated? I'm like, there's no fucking tricks, man. There's no tricks, because some days I just don't feel motivated, and that's just part of life. Not
Mhm.
every day you're going to feel motivated, but guess what? Every day I have the opportunity, and I know I can do it because I have done it in the past, but I have the opportunity to be disciplined in my practice. And to me, recently, that's meant keeping up with my morning routine to make myself at the peak capacity, start every day off with a bang, and when I do that, I feel fucking amazing. And I've been going on a pretty long streak right now with that. And it's self-care. It's self-care. That's a big part of that. And we can feel when we have, like, the funny thing is, when we do things for ourselves, we're never motivated to do them. When we do things for others, we're usually more motivated to do them because it's like, oh, well, this person's expecting this of me. Okay, well, what
Mhm.
about yourself? What about yourself? And I think this is where we can look at the Saturn quincunx the North Node here, which, by the way, is damn close to Venus too. So a lot of this energy has to do with our value, how we've been valuing ourselves. We're not always going to wake up and feel fucking amazing about ourselves. We're not always going to wake up and think about all the amazing things about ourselves. That takes discipline and persistence to be able to do that. Right. So, what this says to me, Saturn making a quincunx to the North Node and Venus here, is how can we allow discipline to be the foundation for us to really strive into communicating our values, communicating our value. Period. If we look at these aspects in the full moon here as well, right? Like, holy shit, it has a lot to do with our value, how we have been perceiving ourselves. Like I said, not every day you're going to wake up feeling like you're worth $1 million and you're ready to go take on the world, and your worth, and you feel secure in your image and all of that. But here's the thing, and this is what I said at the beginning of the podcast, like, when you can keep up with that, which takes a lot of discipline, when you can keep up with that even when things are going well, You prepare yourself, you build the faculties for yourself to handle any obstacle that comes your way when it does happen. Whereas if we're only giving ourselves self-care when shit hits the fan and when things go crazy, or in other words, when we're not disciplined enough to keep it consistently, so life falls apart, and when it falls apart, then we decide, okay, well, now I need to start up my morning practice, now I need to meditate, now I need to do these things to make myself feel good, now I need to go get a massage, now I need to have self-care dates and all that. It's like, if that's a consistent thing, then first of all, you have less episodes where you're unable to handle the stress of your circumstances, and you have more experiences where you kind of are just always solid. It's not as crazy volatile as most of us like to live our lives. Life becomes a lot more consistent when we become consistent, with our practice and with how we have been perceiving ourselves, and doing the work that's necessary for us to succeed in all areas. And that takes practice, that takes hard work, and it's that's a part of it. And I think a lot, like, we're gonna really feel the emphasis of values. This full moon starts it off, like, really, really much so. But even a few days after the full moon, because Venus will make a nice conjunction with the North Node, and an opposition with the South Node, which will really anchor in. You know, if we value ourselves, then guess what? Our vision looks pretty damn good. If we value ourselves, the vision for what is possible for us, like the paradigm for what is possible for us, becomes a lot more sustainable and ultimately just better, period, versus when we're so worried about how the world's perceiving us, or how our partner's perceiving us, or we're worried about whether or not we have the motivation to care for ourselves and love ourselves, and keep up with the rituals and the routines that we need to keep ourselves at peak performance. Instead of worrying about that, when we listen to that Saturn wisdom, we listen to that power, we listen to that discipline that Saturn teaches us, and we commit to that, and we commit to ourselves, and we are consistent within ourselves, well, like I said, reality will reflect that back to us. So if it feels like everything's been kind of all over the place, which, fucking hell, I'm not gonna lie, it has, totally felt like that. But the more, and I've noticed this, the more that I'm consistent with my own practice, with my own discipline towards the things that I need to do, and how I perceive myself, and my affirmations, and the things that I say to myself to build myself into a better person, and reading and learning and educating and all of that, the more I'm consistent with that, with ultimately just bettering myself and increasing my own value. Obviously, the more I'm able to see my value, because as your value goes up, the more value you have, the more you're able to actually see the value that you have. Because it's not really like your value ever goes up. It's just your capacity to see your true value expands, and in that expansion, you feel better, and then you exude that confidence, and then your value goes up, so they say. But we are all infinitely valuable just through our beingness, but it's just about how we perceive ourselves. The world will only reflect back to you how you value yourself. So if you don't value yourself in the capacity that that you truly are, in all that you are, in the divine light that you are, then the world is not going to see you in that light either. Some people, some beautiful, lucky people that you may have in your life, may reflect that to you, and you're very lucky, and you should feel that gratitude for those people every day. And that's really what relationships are all about. But at the same time, you can't be relying on that too much. Those are fine when you're in the dumps and stuff, and you need that little nudge out of there to get back on your own shit. But you can't be relying on that. It's not sustainable. You have to be self-sustained, and the only way to be self-sustained is to continually be disciplined enough to stay consistent in your own practice, in your own life, and in your own values. And that's what integrity is all about. And that's really, if I were to wrap up all these themes that is being brought out of this full moon, it is definitely that. It's like our integrity goes through the roof when we value ourselves to the capacity that we truly are, and we're able to just walk with that little bit of confidence because of that. but like I said, full moon, it's there's a lot of things that we need to still work through. You know, a lot of insecurities for how we're showing up to the world and how the world sees us, and our ability to be disciplined with ourselves, and also our how we value ourselves and our partners, and our vision for ourselves, the potential vision for ourselves. Are we focusing on the worst case scenarios, the best case scenarios? Like all of these kind of aspects are wavering in here as well, which is important. But it really just comes down to self value and being able to see ourselves in the true light of all that we are.
Yeah, I feel like as we've been watching society go through all of these different, untangling of these knots, I feel like it's been giving us a good look at how the individual approaches society, how I approach a problem in the world, and because of that, these shifts are making it feel as if this is a just such a new time, such a like not like a new normal, but like a new experience of consciousness. It's almost like the valve has been opened, and now is because the past few months it's almost felt as if we haven't been able to tap into what we can tap in now. And because of that, we're releasing sort of the more Venusian themes, more mercurial themes. We're tapping more into those Saturnian themes, and those Saturnian themes are like they're potent. They feel like you're getting a spanking from like Jordan Peterson
Mhm.
or something like that. It's like, and
Yeah.
and that, but that's one of the best feelings though, because what did we come to Earth for otherwise than to work on our consciousness, to work on ourselves, to identify the BS that we were kind of born into this world with. And because of that, it's like anything that we can do to release some kind of victim mentality on a daily basis is, for me in my own personal life, has been like the only thing I can really care about. It's like, how can I make my own experience of reality better? And that's what really all it ever is. Really, all it's ever has been is it's been an illusion for me to think, how can this person value me more, other than to be like, how can I value me more? That's all it is. It has never
Mhm.
been anything other than that. So I'm excited to continue to learn a lot through these themes. Um, what do we have here? Mercury enter Leo. So yeah, so
Yeah.
Mercury entering Leo is so powerful too, just because it's like bringing light to the mind. It's like we have the
Mhm.
ability just to look directly at it, as you were saying earlier. So
Exactly.
what do we have on Mercury enters Leo?
I mean, the big thing is, like I said, Venus is coming up to that close conjunction and opposition with the nodes,
Hmm.
and we will have a Mercury Sun conjunction more towards the end of the season. But Mercury and Leo, like you just said, it's really about bringing in that the the capacity for us to see ourselves within our mind, because ultimately how we perceive ourselves, like I've been reiterating multiple times, is how the world sees us. So when we can see our own light for what it truly is, we naturally exude a little bit more confidence than we normally do. I will say though that during this day, uh, Mercury is also in a quincunx, which is considerably a challenging aspect, to the moon, throughout this as well, which is interesting because we've had this kind of this Gemini Pisces type of vibe with the Venus Neptune square, and then now, right as Mercury kind of gets a little bit of a break from all that, we still have this kind of challenging yet introspective aspect that brings us into a deeper understanding of our feeling center. Because I feel like when it's like we've been lost in the feelings quite a lot with that long Mercury and Cancer transit, and because of that, we can also have lost touch with our feelings, lost touch with the true clarity of our own mind. So this aspect with the moon in Pisces, the day that it enters into Mercury enters into Leo, really shows us what is left, uh, when all of that kind of the distortion about when we're too obsessed about the feelings, and we can kind of pull that all away and see our light for what it truly is. What's left? What's left is the wholeness. That's Pisces. It's like that wholeness of being really connected with all of this, and that's where the magic happens, and that's where we see our true value. Without worry, without fear, and without um, without our kind of emotional bias that we have too. And,
Hmm.
and then Venus enters Cancer a few days later. Now, okay, that's pretty interesting too, because you think about, okay, when Mercury enters Leo, we have this quincunx, which is a challenging aspect, which is bringing back that kind of reflective, introspective energy towards sifting through the rubble of our emotions and seeing things in a clearer light than we have over the last little while. Now look what happens when Venus enters into Cancer. We got a square with the moon, right? Square with the moon, and then shortly after, Venus will square Chiron as well. So right away we have this it's boom. We think we think we're done with the feelings, but it's like it's not enough just to go through challenging times where our feelings are challenged and we're kind of forced to move out of our comfort zone, or we're forced to let go of our emotional biases and all of that. It's not enough just to experience that. What we do with the remains of that is what matters most, and that's what we're being shown too. Like Venus is like right off the bat squared up with the moon. Okay, well, and it's a cardinal square, so it's looking at what changes are going to be implemented moving forward from this. Venus is left shadow, right? Moon is in Aries, where we feel a lot of emotional intensity towards our emotions. So square off right in the beginning, and then not too long after, Venus will hit up Chiron. Because Chiron slowed down quite a lot as it's gone through retrograde motion. So it's like back to back kind of hits between looking at the emotional resistance, or the kind of volatility that we may have, the reactivity that still remains. Just because it's been brought up to the surface for us to see doesn't mean it's gone. It's like there's still work to be done, and that work is really what this Venus transit through Cancer is all about. It's about taking what we learned through that long Venus and Gemini season and transferring it to the emotional reality of our relationships, and actually working through that. But the work is not done, and then because when Venus will come into a square with Chiron, later in the season, towards the end of Leo season, that's when we can really experience the when one door closes, one door opens. So when that door of healing in that way, right, with Venus retrograde in Gemini, that was about healing our mental processes towards our partner, and how the expectations that we've had, and our paradigms of the fears and the traumas and the conditioning that we've gone through, and can we let those go, or are we going to be attached to them, or are we going to be fragmented by them, a little bit this way, a little bit that way. With Venus in Cancer, it's about learning how to really tune into the more or less the intuition, allow the intuition to guide us forward through the healing process. So when Venus meets that square with Chiron later in the season, that'll be it's all building up to this idea that in order to really close the door on that chapter, we need to put our attention onto the next thing. We need to start the next phase in our intimate lives, in our interpersonal lives, which is really exploring the value of our emotional connections, and continuing to chip away at all the resistance we have to fully embracing that and fully feeling that. But it's navigating it in a much more intuitive way than a logical way, which we really needed during Venus and Gemini. We really needed to see the logical processes, and we need to kind of see it in that black and white way in order for us to make any changes. Otherwise we wouldn't have. Where now it's more, okay, we need to be guided by our intuition and look at the feelings, look at how we're feeling, look at what we're still connected to from the past. What's still got some roots left that we haven't quite trimmed off yet, that we can't really fully pull out yet. Where do we need to kind of trim those roots? And Chiron and Aries will help us do that for sure. It'll help us burn away those roots so that we can really uproot it all and see it for what it really is, and get rid of it, and then plant new things in its place.
Truthfully, though, and because those things, like, I'm even able to identify them sort of in my own psyche, and especially thinking about, I'm sure you are too, but it doesn't matter as an astrologer if you can identify it. I mean, that's of course the first step, but like pulling roots, they're very deep. They're
Mhm.
very deep to the point of like I know exactly how to do it. I know like I'm like listening to spirit, that intuitive side of Cancer is coming through to me, and I'm still just sitting there like, damn, like I just can't verbalize it sometimes. And the truth is that you know, even though I can't verbalize it sometimes, I know that I have to. I know that I have to do it for my own sake, or else it's just going to be the same pattern that's repeating again and again and again. It almost like I have to sort of look in the mirror and scorn myself, or look at another person and really just admit how I feel, or admit exactly what's on my mind. And a lot of
Mhm.
the times, when I'm not admitting what's on my mind, is because I'm scared that it's like some insecurity or some illusion or something like that. But how else do you work through them unless you actually like sometimes feel stupid for the way that you look or feel, or what you say? And that's really some of the lessons that I've been learning. And honestly, like I'm looking forward to Chiron and Aries being able to just be like, just do it, say it
Mhm.
right now, just do it, say it. Like that voice in my head. I feel like that's Chiron and Aries sometimes, and
Totally.
I really want to start listening more to that voice, to the point where I'm like, yeah, yeah, I do want to do it. Like, what else? What's next? Like, let's get action. Let's get oriented. So yeah, I certainly relate to what's going on in the future with Venus and Cancer right now. It's like coming through with the Venus side of it, and maybe that's because
Totally.
of the relationship to Venus squaring Neptune as well, because Neptune being the higher octave of what Cancer would be.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so this is the new moon in Leo, which is happening on August 18th, 10:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 26 degrees, 35 minutes Leo. Okay, this is
Mhm.
conjunct Mercury, trine the south node, sextile the north node. I mean, it's in the new moon's in a trine with Mars as well through all of this, which is pretty interesting, and also a very the new moon's in conjunct Saturn. Like this is the quincunx season is here apparently. I'm just noticing all of this now, even though I've gone over the charts like multiple times. I mean, I guess I did notice that before, but yeah, wow, is it quincunx season? Because we even have like a pretty like a mini yod going on as well. If you can kind of see this, like between the sextile of
Mhm.
those guys and the in conjunct to Saturn. Um, man, see, when we talk about these values that are being brought up through the full moon on the when was that, on the third or the fourth, right? Full moon is on the
Mm,
3rd. Yeah, it's like 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's on the 3rd for most people and the 4th for some people. But the the full moon is like bringing up those insecurities, bringing up those kind of paradigms and processes and fears and limitations, and all the things that have been kind of preventing us from seeing our value. And it's like now this new moon in Leo is like, which we'll experience on the 18th, is this is bringing in, okay, well, now that you see your value, let's put it to the test. Why don't we? Let's
mm,
see if you're really walking the talk. And if you can really walk the talk, then let's see what greatness comes from this. And if you can't, well, you better strengthen yourself up, because there's still a lot of weak parts that are, there's still a lot of holes in the foundation here. That's really preventing you from uh, from the highest potential that you could be experiencing. So, I mean, new moon conjunct Mercury in Leo, again, just anchoring, knowing your value, knowing it on a deep mental heart level. That's really mind heart coherence here, right? Learning how to harmonize the mind and the heart in regards to knowing your value, your true value, and the value that you're offering to this world. It's trying an aspect to the nodes, trine sextile, right? So trining the south node, it's like pouring down on us this this transformative fire energy. It's like, really paying attention to the insecurities of our past goals. Perhaps there's been, like, I can see this new moon as bringing up a lot of insecurities about past failures, right? We got Mars in shadow in Aries trining this too. We've got it's really a grand trine, pretty much going on here. Mars in Aries in shadow, South Node in Sagittarius with the new moon conjunct Mercury in Leo. It's like the insecurities will be brought up. But if you have that rooted sense of what you're worth, what your value is, that means that you're also recognize the value even in your insecurities. And that's very important because a lot of times we look at our insecurities as weaknesses, when they can actually be parts of strength, when we can see them in that way. But you have to see them in that way. And the only way to see them in that way is to actually know your value. So, and we know our value by knowing what we're capable of, by putting that to the test with this trine to Mars and Aries, coming up. And this will get stronger. This is the preempt. The new moon is the preempt, but it gets stronger after the new moon. And in fact, it'll, that'll be when it's really strong too, because the moon will be leaving the kind of overbearing nature. Like moon in Leo is not very strong, especially being right beside the sun here, which is like at peak, it's just not really happening. So I think we'll really see that when the moon conjuncts Mercury, like later, I guess later that evening or early in the morning of the next day, as well as making those aspects to the nodes, because that's when we'll really feel those insecurities be brought up for us to see out in the open. And then it's like, that's when, like I said, mastery doesn't come when we're sitting by the pool sipping pina coladas, right? Mastery comes when we're immersed and facing our fears and insecurities head on. And when we can recognize that and see that for what they actually are. And I mean, holy shit, this is a very karmic new moon as well, right? We have a huge yod going up, all pointing towards Saturn, right? 26-degree Saturn making a fat quincunx to this new moon, and we have the North Node in Gemini also making a quincunx to Saturn at the same time. So we have this deep pressure pushing towards Saturn, pushing towards discipline, pushing towards, and that's what I mean when I say if you're not walking the talk, your foundation is going to be rocky, right? But if you are walking the talk and you have been working on these insecurities, you have been seeing them, you have been facing them, you haven't been facing yourself head on, then these quote unquote insecurities are not going to feel as limiting as your own mind, right? And when you can recognize that it's not about the insecurities, it's about your relationship with your own mind, and you work consciously to alter that, you work consciously to better that, you work consciously to progress that in a positive direction, that's when real success happens. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It doesn't happen in little moments. It happens over time. And that's what Saturn's all about. It's like you put in the work over time, you put in that consistency, you put in, you work on seeing your true value every single day, right? That prepares you for that. And by the way, during this whole thing, Juno quincunx Neptune, another very karmic aspect here in regards to relationships. So again, this will also bring up relationship insecurities too. It's like, are you still dependent on your partner to give you all your sense of security? Or are you able to trust in God? Are you able to trust in the divine? Are you able to find that nourishment, that security, that sense of strength from within, and from within your own self, as well as from within God or Allah or the universe or whatever the hell you believe in, the divinity that is within you that created you. It's like that's really coming to terms with the insecurities that we hold within our partnerships, within our relationships. So all of these themes are being brought out, to the peak capacity. By the way, Mars is coming into a like Saturn's retrograding backwards, coming into a tighter square with Mars, so that's gonna be pretty potent too. Which is it's beginning throughout all of this, right? And then it'll happen over the next few days leading up after that as we enter into Virgo season. But so that's going to be very interesting too, because Mars will make that aspect with Saturn, which will be pretty intense, and then we'll experience that hit a few times actually through the retrograde cycles. But that's all leading up to Mars retrograde, which is going to be fucking pretty wild in Aries, as that we'll talk about when it comes to September. But this new moon's really about owning our insecurities and in a sense, utilizing them as strengths instead of submitting to them as weaknesses. Because only when we can own our insecurities and know what our insecurities is, and that's a big thing too with this new moon conjunct Mercury, knowing what those insecurities are, right? Because when you know what your true value is and you know what your insecurities are, then you know what you need to work on, and you can actively begin. So and the new moon has a lot of great energy that's flowing towards actively moving towards that, even actively correcting the perception that you've had on the past with this trine to the south node. It's like, whoa, the way in which you've been perceiving yourself through the lens of the past maybe hasn't been so beneficial. Maybe it's been, in a sense, bringing in more insecurity to you and to your potential and to your own foundation. So Leo season, in general, full moon, new moon, all these events that are happening in between that and after, it's showing us deeply and clearly and shining light on the insecurities that we hold still. And a lot of these are remaining insecurities coming out of the Venus retrograde cycle, and that we need to still deal with. It's like Venus retrograde kind of stirred up the pot. It's like, now we need to do some sifting work. That's where the real work really happens, and find that gold, find that value once again, because that's very important.
One of the things I think about often with my like Cancer Leo placements is that like Cancer is like the lighted home that we build, and Leo's not necessarily just inside. It's like Leo is on the path. Leo is outside in the unknown. The unknown is the darkness, and we're surrounded by the darkness all around us. And so it's like, as we're traversing through this darkness, we're gonna run into times when we're not well equipped, or we're not fully, ready to go fight some giant battle. And that's when those insecurities arise. And it's like, great, like you said, great. Now
Mm-hmm.
because you're gonna go in the darkness the rest of your life. Therefore, you might as well try now, fail now, and then learn from that. Otherwise, you're just going to stay in your home. It's going to feel like COVID. It's going to feel like we're in quarantine. It's like, go outside, go experience the world, go experience the darkness, go experience where the light needs to be brought to, but only through the factors of understanding that you can do it. Like, you can bring the light wherever you want. And the truth is, the light is just something that you can sit and just bring more light to you right now, just as you sit here and just say, I want more light. So it's not even a matter of even being prepared, because we have everything we need in every moment. And that's an important lesson to remember in Leo. It's like, everything comes from the heart. So we have to follow our heart, not so much our minds, not so much our desires. It's about doing what's right. It's about doing what we know is right. In this Leo season, I'm pretty excited to face those insecurities, because insecurities are kind of pathetic to me. I feel pathetic when I'm just living in my insecurities. There's a reality where I don't do that, and why not aim for that reality? Why not go forth and be a warrior rather than be a worrier? So,
no, exactly, and I think utilizing this opportunity to clearly see and define what our insecurities are, and face them, with courage. And that's, taking forth that Leo energy of courage and strength. The strength card is got the lion on it in tarot, right? And it's Leo. And I mean, you can see it as Aquarius watching over Leo, the woman, right? But so finding strength in your insecurities is possible, but only when you have the potential to see it for what it actually is, as opposed to seeing your insecurities as either something that is, oh, it's not a problem, or it's just part of my personality, or it's just part of me, blah, 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 blah. All these bullshit excuses that allow you to keep operating at below peak capacity, right?
well,
That's not what we're here to do.
it's like you can like open the door. You can kind of like do it slowly. You can kind of see how dark it is in your room of insecurities. You can like stick your hand in. But the truth is, most people we don't realize that we can just like throw the door wide open, walk up in there, turn the flashlight on, and see what's in there. A lot of people see the door to, you just got to go knock on the door and say, what is behind this door. Most people see the door and they want to run away and don't even want to know that that door even exists.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
like in the allegory of the cave, like the fear of the shadows, right, as being something
Mhm.
a lot bigger and crazier and monstrous than they actually are. That's the same thing that happens, and you don't know until you face it, right?
Mhm.
Until you face it, you could just assume that all these like things that may seem like giant problems end up actually not being such big problems anyways, and in fact end up being very amazing opportunities for you to accelerate yourself in ways beyond your current comprehension, you know?
Absolutely. That's why I feel so pathetic when you're like scared of something that you don't even know what it is. It's unknown. That's
Mhm.
part of it being insecure. It's like because if you knew about it, you could fix it. And most of the time if you know about it, the problems aren't as big when we turn around and we face the dragon of chaos that's behind
Mm.
us.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of delicate balance between knowing about it and then having the willingness and discipline to go about acting on that
Mhm.
knowingness, because it's not enough to just know. To know
Mm.
and not to do is not really to know. So you don't really know it until you're actively working to positively change those set circumstances that seem to be such a challenge, to you during that time, which a lot of us kind of face on the day to day. A lot of
Mhm.
us believe that these challenges, oh, like I'm aware of my limitations, so that is what doing the work's all about. It's like, no, actually, being
Yeah.
aware is probably like, I'm not saying it's not an important part. It's a very important part in the journey. Absolutely, no doubt about that. However, um, to know is not enough. You need to
Mhm.
do something about it. It's like you can be aware of your insecurities and just always live in fear of them, knowing
Yeah.
what it's like, I know what they are and I'm afraid of them, but I at least I know what they are. It's like,
Just, like,
okay,
laying in bed with depression and anxiety and being
yeah.
like, I'm so full of insecurities, this one and that one and that one."
Yeah, I know what's wrong with me. It's like, okay, well, if you know what's wrong with you, then are you gonna do something about it, or are you gonna kind of stay in the same spot?
And why should we want to do something about it, you know? Like, just even if you know how to do something about it, doesn't mean that it's the mountain metaphor. It's like, just because you know there's
Mhm.
mountains doesn't mean you're going hiking, you know? It's like,
Yeah,
you gotta kinda
yeah,
prepare for that, yeah.
no, totally. And I feel like a lot of people, when they see it, it almost trips them up to the point where they either think that the work is done, or they're waiting. Now that it's like, now that I know it, I can take a break, and then whenever I feel motivated to actually deal with these problems, then I'll start. And that's a big problem, because your emotions will never make you motivated for facing something like that. Your ego will never make you feel that motivation, and will never let you feel that motivation.
It does the
So
opposite, though.
it does the
It
opposite.
yeah.
Does the exact opposite. It makes you never feel motivated, and then you use that excuse, like I'm not motivated, as an excuse for not actually doing the work. And because of that, you stay in these toxic patterns that keep you much lower from uh much lower in your potential than you definitely could be. So it's about not just knowing, but actually applying and doing, and actively working through and with these energies by facing them head on, right? All these insecurities, these traumas, these conditions that we all have and we all go through, and no one's is worse or better than others. We're given what we can handle, right? So we're only given what we can handle, and in that understanding, you know, it's not about waiting for the right motivation, or waiting for the day to feel right, or the star, like even astrology and stuff. The stars got to be aligned to for me to do. It's like, man, like if that was true, nothing would ever get done. So that's the thing, right? Like, as much as astrology is a great tool, and all these, and like a lot of modern astrologers say, oh, when the moon is void, don't do anything, and just don't
Mm,
don't don't finish. And I'm like, man, if that was true, which by the way, it's true every moon cycle, so that's what, every 2.5 days. So the what, every 2.5 days I'm supposed to just not do shit that I need to do because the moon is void. I'm
mm.
saying this as an astrologer, so I think it should be more impactful to the people listening to really understand that, if you live your life waiting for the perfect moment, it's never going to fucking come your way, because your ideal of what the perfect moment is, you have no idea when the perfect moment is, right? You have no idea when the perfect moment is going to come your way because you have this ideal in your mind versus the reality of what is here now. It's like if you have the capacity in your mind right now to actually go and deal with an issue or go and better yourself in some way, you have the capacity to do that. Do it right now. It's like you have the capacity. Don't wait for the right alignment of the stars or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, you need to, like, I remember one day, and the reason that I found this funny was because I'm an astrologer, obviously. So I found it funny and kind of ironic, but that I found it ironic that I was getting a little frustrated at this. But I had one client say that she didn't want to enroll in one of my programs because Mercury was retrograde or something like that, and she wanted to make sure that Mercury was right. Even though, like, I talking to her, I know she didn't know a lot about astrology or anything enough to actually make accurate decisions based off of her natal chart and transits and all that. So it's more or less just like, I heard this thing, and it's like, if you use that as an excuse not to better yourself, not to take charge of your life, it's like you're always going to be waiting. You're always going to be waiting to pull the trigger. And not only that, because that's a whole other issue. But the real issue to me is that you're relying on outside sources to tell you when to go and change. You're relying on outside sources and circumstances to dictate when you make moves. It's like, are you really the conscious one here, or are you just part of, you just kind of flowing with whatever's happening, right? It's like, if we're here as conscious beings, meaning that we make conscious decisions when we are going to do certain things, when I'm going to commit to this, when I'm going to start this, when I'm going to do this. As soon as you have the idea, you have the capacity to start the ball rolling and start creating that. So you have the faculties to do that. Yet we're always, and we're all guilty of it in some way, but we're all waiting for the sign when everything will work out and be perfect for us to then take action. It's like things become perfect when we start, not before we can start. And I think if you live life in that way, you're going to get a hell of a lot further than if you were to live life in a way where you have to wait for the perfect moment for everything to line up perfectly before you even step on the gas, before you even start, before you even pull the trigger. Because the universe rewards people who take inspired action towards their dreams, their accomplishments, and the necessary things they need to achieve in this world. And knowing that, like, the universe is always in your favor and watching your back and trying to make everything happen for you. Not trying, but actually making everything happen for you in every single moment. And in that capability, you're waiting for the right time. You're waiting for the right time out there sometime in the future. It's like, man, it's why it happens in the moment, baby. It's all kind of blotchy here, but it happens in the moment. It all happens in the moment. And we make decisions for ourselves in the moment, not in some future day when Mercury is direct and all that shit.
Yeah, it might be better sometimes to do things during Mercury retrograde, during the moon when it's void, because maybe those are lessons you wouldn't learn otherwise.
Exactly.
It's the lessons that are there. That's why, like, especially becoming an astrologer, you quickly learn you don't get out of the cycles. You don't get out of, like, we just talked for an hour and 48 minutes about all that's going to come in the near future, how to prepare for it, how to be ready. And yet you and I are still we're gonna slip a little bit. We're gonna go here and there because we have to. We're not doing these podcasts to avoid those sort of lessons. It's like we're doing it to really be present while it's happening, to really experience it and be like, yeah, like, this is what I was ready for. I prepared for it. Even during, like, a Mercury retrograde or Mars retrograde, it's like I was ready for it. I knew what was coming because I listened to a Mindful Moment podcast. And because of that, like, even with the Venus retrograde, or the Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, squaring Neptune, all of this, I went through a hell of a time. It was very stressful, and I grew so much from it. And because I wouldn't have grown if I wouldn't have stepped out into the darkness, stepped out into the unknown. And because of that, I feel better because of that. So honestly, I don't, as an astrologer, I don't ever tell people not to do things during like Mercury retrograde or Venus retrograde. I'm more or less like, have fun, you know, it'll be a good time, you know, like whatever
Yeah.
happens. So,
It's definitely circumstantial, you know, like
mhm,
for if there's specific questions about certain things, like, you know, sometimes clients want to know, you know, a specific time or date to do a trip or something like that, you know, that's when you
mhm,
can tune into when would be the best opportunity for you to, you know, to be in alignment with the planets and all that. But at the end of the day, you know, you're gonna do what you're gonna do regardless, and you're gonna have to do it. Period. You know, so it doesn't matter what season or time of is going on. What matters more or less is your willingness to actually go and do that, and
mhm,
that's what matters. And that really comes back down full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning with Leo season is when you know your value, when you can see your light in what it truly is. You don't need the motivation to go and recognize that. You don't need the motivation to do that. You need the discipline to be able to wake up every day and affirm to yourself your worth and create your worth and actualize your worth, right? That's the power of being so rooted in your values, being so rooted in your sense of self-worth and self-love and committed to the attainment of that and the consistency of that every single day. That momentum, that is what fuels change. That's what fuels your soul. Seriously though, right? This is what fuels us as beings much beyond the flesh, you know. And when we can know that, when we can root that foundation down for ourselves, that is ultimately what this is all about.
hmm. Yeah, certainly. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I think we're pretty clear on. I think we did a really good job explaining all that, and I hope everyone listening now or later uh, really was able to soak in that and maybe even take some notes about these upcoming dates because, like I said, the full moon, new moon, these big transits that were mentioned, very important times and very important to our own development as well as our own sense of perceived value, you know, for ourselves and how we value ourselves, how we see ourselves in that capacity. So
Hmm.
I just want to thank everyone once again for tuning in with us and joining us for another forecast. It's always a pleasure. It's always fun going over this. I'll probably do a live new moon or a live full moon um, on YouTube as well, where you guys can tune in, and I'll go over the full moon for each of the rising signs. I think that'll be fun, and
Hmm.
we can dive a little bit deeper into that. Make sure you check out Brent's page at Alchemist Apollo or alchemistapollo.com, right?
Hmm.
It's your website. And
Yep.
IamWillNichols.com if you want to book a consultation, work with me one on one. And make sure you follow us too at I am Will Nichols, at Alchemist Apollo, and at A Mindful Moment podcast on most social platforms that we're not yet banned on. Hey,
Yeah, we'll get if
uh,
we get there. I'll be happy. I'll be proud.
oh, I'm getting there soon. I'm already getting my stuff censored and stuff like that. So we're right around the corner, people. But yeah, yeah. I got some ideas for what to do though with if the podcast does get if we get censored. So we've got some
Mm.
backup options, which is good. We should probably start implementing those regardless. But anyways, love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us once again. We very much appreciate it. And yeah, we will see you next season, Virgo season for the next forecast. Have a good one. Thanks for joining me again, Brent. Always a
Thanks.
pleasure.
Yep.